of the reason that kind of caused me to be interested in this, what is this called? Political compass. Suddenly forgot the name. And it's really because the way they define it, and he started off by saying, look, left and right actually is only for economic. And in the truest sense. And I find it very interesting because, Lyra, would you agree, even all the show that we've been talking about, when we talk about left, we say the Marxist left, but we sort of put in the social behavior also.
Yeah, I think generally people would think left, you're more for like woke agenda, LGBTQ rights.
Yeah.
So I guess that probably is why we're doing this test, to really just see what is your economic leaning rather than your societal values. So
I guess it's like it's a two different spectrum like that. And remember we talked about like Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan, when he became president, he managed to attract a large portion of Democrats. Why? Because he was a very conservative guy from the economic point of view. So he was like, so that's why a lot of those union people, ordinary worker, factory worker, they drove to his side because he was helping them. He was not helping the globalists, for example. But of course, he was also conservative in certain area, abortion, things like that, but not quite as others. So that's why, especially in the American politics, I think left and right, they really put in a lot of the social part. But anyway, for the purpose of today, the left and right really just means economic. So left will be like, you're trending towards socialism, you're trending towards welfare state, you are trending towards more state intervention, for example, which is a bit like Malaysia. Then you have right, which is the other extreme. Of course, we all kind of say we agree with free market, but how much later we'll see our result. So of course, the most extreme one will be like, whatever happened, government will not intervene. That's like the John Locke free market theory. Now let's talk about the social one. Okay, now authoritarian. Now, Lyra, how would you define it? Based on the questions and maybe. I have my own theory how he came about, but maybe you can give us your take first on this.
I guess like what you say at the very beginning of the show, authoritarian / totalitarian. So when I see the word authoritarian, I think automatically I'm thinking of totalitarian, like CCP, like clamping down on the personal liberty. So I guess it's almost like you need a very big government to intervene so that there is a certain order in the society. So it's like you basically make yourself above law, I think. I mean, that's my definition of authoritarian.
Would you include legislating morality?
Yeah, I mean, we do need to have, I mean, I disagree that we totally don't have any government intervention.
Yeah. Again, it's a question of degree.
Yeah. So, but I think we do need to legislate morality because otherwise, then otherwise the whole country will be lawless.
Yeah, so I mean, even in the questions, you see different spectrum, right? Like, for example, what people do in their bedroom. Should you do that? Because that's what we have with Kawat and things like that. Then we have certain behavior which has more social impact, like recognizing gay marriage, for example. Because now, by the way, recognizing gay marriage, why is a broader topic? Because it affects the children. It affects the way the lifestyle of the children, for example. Then you have things like abortion, which people agree or disagree based on the fact that when did life begin? So if people believe that it began at conceptions, then the moral point of view, now it's not just religious, because I've seen people who are not religious, but they're against abortion on the basis they believe life starts at conception. So conversely, people who don't believe that and just say, oh, it's just an embryo, it's just a cell, so we're just removing cell. So they don't view that as murder. So that's why it becomes inherently a moral issue. And so to me, I can differentiate those from personal behavior. So I mean, there's even a question on pornography and things like that. It says, should it be legislated? In fact, I don't believe it should be legislated. But again, that's the more libertarian part of me. But anyway, one of the comment I just put in the notes here is that authoritarian, when you think about it, and maybe David, you can give your take on that. And now bear in mind that this test is more from Western point of view, but I think it applies to the Asian culture, you see, because authoritarian, we tend to think conservative. Like, so in Chinese we say the 保守派. So the 保守派 are more authoritarian because you have to behave in such a way. And so we think historically that's how it is. So let's say you're a religious group, you better don't wear miniskirt, you better don't show whatever thing and things like that. But then when we go to today's age, then we start to have woke, we start to have the LGBT, the trans will be like, you know, if you don't allow the transgender to compete, then you're disqualified from this conference, from NCA. That is already happening. So some of the school, if they don't allow trans to compete in women's category, they can be disqualified from entire tournament. So we see the manifestation of woke in terms of cancel culture. So now my question to you is, do you view this kind of behavior as authoritarian?
Yeah, it's interesting because authoritarian and just now Lyra mentioned totalitarian is first after I hear the word, I also have same feeling as Lyra.
Link.
Yeah, so for me the authoritarian, the definition is more how to say, it's not fluid. It's more to the regulation. You have to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So libertarian is more to you can choose, you can decide, you can discuss. So for me I differentiate these two concepts like this. So just now you asking me the woke. I think if the woke went too far to force people to accept the ideologies, I think can be authoritarian.
It can go into
actually
quadrant.
everything can, if we go to some
If
fanatic,
you force people.
Yeah, some fanatic extent, it is authoritarian for me.
Do you have a choice in the whole discussion?
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
I mean, like dress code like that, you know, like dress code.
yeah, exactly. So for let's say for Malaysia, we have some issue we cannot talk about it. So for in that context and in that issues, I may consider it is authoritarian. But other things we can talk about it openly. I'm fine with that.
So it's very interesting the way you put it. It's like that means authoritarian depends on what kind of control is being exerted. Because like in Malaysia, the authoritarian will be, like for example in Malaysia, conservative will be what you call PAS.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like I mean when UMNO is compared with PAS, UMNO is considered liberal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we use that kind of mindset. But then of course, then if we go to liberal America now, we think about California, we think about New York, and the weaponization of sexual revolution. If you don't agree with that, if you go to YouTube and say something bad about transgender, you are cancelled. See, that's the authoritarian from that. But I mean, they both display similar characteristics, but the subject matter is totally different.
Yep.
So I guess it's really looking at, are you using your power and influence, government power, commercial power, whatever power to stop people and from expressing themselves?
Yep.
That would be more militant already, right?
I guess that's another good words, militant and
Militant.
and we see, because like certain religions, so we talk about certain religion are militant. We talk about how like for example, later we talk about it, like communist, Mao's communist cultural revolution. It's quite militant because he followed Stalin, he followed Lenin, going back to French Revolution. Pol Pot did the same, Castro did the same. So a lot of Latin American nation in the 70s did the same because but there's one question which we'll talk about it after we look at the question. Okay, so that's authoritarian. But okay, what about libertarian?
Libertarian.
I mean, earlier on, I sort of defined that as classical liberal. So it's very interesting. I was just, I mean, it wasn't even my intention, but because of some of the commentary here, just go and watch some video. So they talk about Hollywood, okay? They say from 1930s all the way to 50s and 60s, Hollywood movies a lot of them are Jews, a lot of them are super liberal. You know, they do movie about liberal, and they're for free market and things like that. So they are really the classical liberal, you know. Because today, now, do you agree that sometimes people confuse liberal with left?
Yeah.
Because it's really because the left has tried to portray themselves as liberal. It's like, because you see, the left is really more authoritarian, as we say, because I mean, we use a social left, like in America, for example, the woke and things like that. Then they'll be like, oh, we have our awareness already, we have social justice already, the black has been oppressed, that's why we have BIM, etc., etc. So because of that, we are freeing you. That's why we are liberal. See, they have hijacked the but you see some of the liberal people, like from American point of view, you see people like Joe Rogan like that, is classical liberal. He is like increasingly frustrated with woke.
Yep.
You see Bill Maher, you know, the comedian, the political comedian. I mean, nobody will confuse him as a conservative, but he is increasingly critical of the woke.
Yep.
And many other people, you know, Dershowitz, you know, for example. So I just find it very interesting how the whole libertarian has been hijacked, you know. But that's another topic.
Yeah.
But libertarian, I mean, do you agree that it's more like, maybe more like marijuana is fine, that kind of thing? Or
If we go back to the definition for some sociologists or some thinker in 19th or 20th century, it's like, if my liberal don't affect your liberal, that is fine. It's the definition of one of the classic liberalism. For me, it's like, it's too easy to define liberal or libertarian like that, because
it's too broad, is it?
too broad.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like,
I agree
what
with
is
you.
the meaning? It's like my liberty. It's like, so the thing happening in my private space is not affect. How about I commit crime in my private space?
Yeah, that's what also on the discussion just now, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, one of the biggest crime that you can commit now in your private space will be child pornography,
Yeah.
Yep.
for example. And so that's why you see, like, libertarian, they will be like, you know, like, because you look at the last 100 years, socially speaking, you know, abortion was not really acceptable in all culture, in most of the culture, but it has become more acceptable since the sexual revolution in the 50s, 60s. And because it's like there are many analyses for that, you know. It's like people say it's because empowerment of the feminist movement. Some people say it's a decline of morality, decline of religious. But it still doesn't change the fact that, look, if you say that is okay, or you say that we can accept transgender, then where does it stop? You know, do we accept child pornography at some point? Do we accept pedophile at some point? Do we accept sex with animal at some point? You know, where do you draw the line? It's a very slippery road, you know, when you say that there is no, because, you know, that classical definition just kind of made me think about that, because it's like my morality. So what is my morality? Whatever that I think is right.
Yeah.
So it's like, if I think it's okay to have sex with animal in the public place, then should society approve that behavior? I mean, that's what extreme libertarian would look like, you know?
Yeah.
But anyway, that's just my thought on libertarian.
I also thinking about this kind of question. I also discussed with my friends about this kind of question. I think he come out with another kind of definition, but I forgot already. But it's very interesting. For me, after all, libertarian, for healthy libertarian, we have some guidelines. And some of the guidelines is moral. Some of the guidelines is the culture. Some of the guidelines is religion. So, because
you're right.
The core value, I think, is, as a human mankind, yes, we do have free will, we do have liberty, but at the end, it's end out with your self-discipline. You have to bear the fruit you eat. You have to eat the fruit you bear. At the end, you have to sow the seed, the fruit your soul. That's it. Or else, if so many liberty I give to you and you screw up, what is the point I give you liberty?
So yeah, I think that's really interesting. That all the concept we talk about, there has to be context to explain it, you know, whether what manifesto you believe, your religion, your upbringing, the social construct, the economy construct, and all those kind of things. I think for all the four, the context, you know, every time you talk about more context, then the discussion get a bit more nuanced, you know, not so straightforward. But with that, let's look at the test.
Finally.
Okay, so So we can pull out the test. So is it up?
Yep.
Yeah.
It
Yep,
is.
yep. Okay.
Yeah.
So surprisingly, we are quite similar, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So sort of centrist. So David, you're a little bit left only, not much. I'm a bit more libertarian slightly. So I guess we are quite
Centrist.
centrist.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, actually, when I look at it, my interpretation is we believe we are libertarians, maybe centrist economy, but we believe in certain things have to be limited. But what is limited is really depend.
Yeah.
So one of the example we use in discussion, it will be, we talk about, like, if a person is for free economy, normally they will be against universal healthcare. They say, oh, you should work for that. But then those who are against universal healthcare, very often they will say, oh, there should be exception for children. There should be exceptions, certain things, if you're born with certain disability, the state should help. So you can see that they are for one area, but then they quantify it. So that's what I meant by limited. And limited, it means we have different value. Like for some of us, maybe we don't want to legislate what you do in your bedroom. But again, you make a great point just now. What if you are doing crime?
Yep.
Then should your private behavior... But I guess the question was asking about consenting. I think they're talking about sexual relationship per se. But if you're there planning terrorist attack, you're downloading terabyte of child pornography for the purpose of trafficking and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, or even influencing some other people to literally like those ISIS terrorists.
Yeah. So that I think that would be the qualification you make, right? To say that you're against that, and it's all quite subjective in a way, because it depends on our value and belief system.
Yeah. And from this question, the next question we can ask: how do we define crime? It's like, okay, another question, another thing we can talk about.
Because exactly, because you see it evolves, right?
Yeah.
So like, for example, premarital sex was crime for a long time, even in Western civilization.
Yes.
It's only, I think it's only the last 100 years it sort of become more acceptable
Yep.
throughout the whole world.
Yep.
So today, most nations don't punish you for that. So that's why I say that the slippery road. Now they want to move into same sex. Then what about with children? Your line will just get
Lower and lower.
lower and lower. Yeah. So that's why it goes back to the whole discussion. If majority agree that it's not crime,
Does it
make it not crime? Because that's more like mob rule, right?
Yeah. So do we have any kind of core value of the culture of the societies to prevent our society become so messed up?
Yeah, I think that's where, when a nation is formed, when a group of people are together, they have to come to a consensus, So the American experiment did that. Malaysia, in a way, we have that MS63, but not really properly implemented.
Yeah.
But there was a social agreement.
Yep.
And it's even an agreement, but it's just not carried out.
Yeah.
So I guess it's like that, for... That's why, again, we go back to the whole discussion about big government, small governments. If you have a constitutional government, then you always want to limit your own power. And one observer I've seen, he just said, look, the American system is the only one in the world where they voluntarily limit themselves. Because when you look at French is very interesting. Their constitution can be reset every few years. So 10, 20 years, they will call what they call a constitutional convention. Everyone come and we come out with what we agree is the standard for that time. So in fact, there are calls in America for them to do the same, because they say the constitution is outdated. So that's the liberal people will be like, it should be a living document. You're living in the past. But I guess there is a reason why, and because of what Jefferson did, today the federal and state have a healthy balance. Imagine if suddenly I can't remember who was his rival.
Adams.
No, the other guy, the one who designed the finance one.
Oh, Alexander Hamilton.
Hamilton was for big government, so they have a huge fight. But eventually, he prevailed. And Jefferson was not afraid to use his power. He bought Louisiana, which I just read today, it consists of 12 to 15 states. One purchase for Napoleon III. It's like the American history totally changed. So he was not afraid to exercise his power, but he really reduced federal power tremendously. But anyway, that's a side topic. But anyway, what I'm interested now is, now before we look at our other friends, David and Lara, do you agree with the result? Your personal result?
Kind of agree with that.
Kind of. I think I also agree. I mean, I saw my libertarian will be a bit higher, but I guess it depends how you answer the question. Do you agree or strongly agree? If you strongly agree more, I think it will go down a bit. So you generally agree that you are a bit economic centrist. It's like you believe free market but some intervention. You believe freedom but some limitation.
So one line summary is like a flexible people.
So that's why looking at the chart itself doesn't say much about what you believe. But then you have to give example of your economic centrist or your social centrist behavior. Okay. So maybe we can show some of our friends, huh?
Yes.
So now we other friends at the dinner table, you can see some more social. I don't want to say socialist, but they are more into welfare.
Welfare.
And actually, I can really understand, especially after COVID 2 years, people feel like certain part of society deserve help. And for that reason, I think you get some negative feedback for the budget, but overall people still kind of tolerate because like what David was saying, we need an end game, but not immediately, because if we say now you have to work immediately, I think everyone will die. Most people will die. Okay, to kind of finish off, I mean, we have kind of talked about many things. I think we even talked about now one of the things I want to ask you, I asked you during dinner time, but I'm going to ask you again, and which we talk about in context of woke. Now woke, of course, now in the recent, the American conservative, one of the biggest events, CPAC, so they did ask, do a poll, define woke, So I think 200 or 300 people submitted the answer, and it's all over the place. So there's no agreement over what woke is. But for the purpose of today's discussion, I'm just going to define woke as you have some sort of quote-unquote awakening, okay? So why I put quote-unquote, it could be real, it could be your own imagination or whatever. Basically, you're persuaded by some propaganda. Isn't that awakening, okay? But the thing about woke is once you have that realization, you want to go into some sort of forceful rectification. So I would say, for example, NEP is a little bit like that, even though it was not by design. It's more by accident. It wanted to help the general poor, but for whatever reason, it becomes a Ketuangan Melayu kind of thing. It wasn't the design. That was not the design of NEP. But one way or another, it became a Malay supremacy kind of thing. So much so that the National Land Court was even amended that certain portion of Bumi Putra is only Melayu. So just an example, okay? But I want to ask you, because of your area of interest, Mao's Cultural Revolution.
Okay.
Do you consider, using my definition just now, do you consider that a woke movement?
If we say quote unquote awakening, it is, but there's a but. China Cultural Revolution caused a lot of damage. If I recall the the talking with my
when you say
Chinese
damage,
friend,
is that officially acknowledged by China history?
It is. It
is, okay.
Actually,
so they don't try to.
They don't hide. They do.
I mean, it's impossible to hide, right? After the kind of screw you did. But anyway,
all the things disappear. They try to learn from that, because if we go too far, too extreme, it can cause a generation of people have traumatized by it, physically and mentally. Like, for example, why I say there's a huge difference. There's a difference between the woke movement in America right now that with the Chinese Cultural Revolution. It's because Chinese Cultural Revolution is, we say, motivated by Mao himself to secure his power and destroy the old things like old culture, old teaching, old whatever. They just want to fasten themselves to the so-called sociologies or communism society.
Great reset.
Something like that.
Take away religion, take away culture.
And we are equal. We achieve the Marxism kind of society, but it doesn't go that way. So in history, we can see that.
So do you believe, okay, let me ask you a follow-up question which is related. Do you believe that the intent, I mean, they really believe the communism will work, you know?
Yeah, some of them are, they really think the Marxism kind of utopia can achieve. It's like whole of the workers in the world united together, so we can achieve we can fight for the capitalist.
Okay, let me ask you another difficult question. Okay, and this is again from more from the Western point of view of their analysis of communism in Mao.
Yeah,
because one of the hallmarks of communism, I mean, all around the world, but especially in CCP control one during the era was religious persecution. Because you see, the whole theory is like this, that we can make people more easily controlled if we take out the moral construct, if we take out the conscience. So do you believe that was maybe one of the design of communists to because one of the characteristics that is common in all communist Marxist experiment. So you talk about Pol Pot in Cambodia, talk about China, North Korea, even Russia, you talk about Cuba, Venezuela. Is the first thing they have to do is to take out religion. So is that one of the designs, so that people, if you don't have morality, then like what we say, you know, you can do whatever you want. You know, I'm my own law already.
Yeah, it's very interesting to point out the thing. For my information, if I'm not mistaken, in 共产党宣言, how to say, the declaration of Marxism,
the communist manifesto, right?
Manifesto. Or if the quote of Mao, I'm not sure who said it. They say, 宗教是人类精神的鸦片. It's like opium for your mind. So they believe that all things on the earth is created by mineral. It's like 唯物主义. I don't know in English. It's like everything is the substance only. There's no spirit. There's no any other thing. There's no God at all. But we have to admit that in our human society history, actually the religious kind of influence affect the whole world for 1,000 years. If you say you are right, you cannot so simply take out the thing we believe for 1,000 years. So just now you say that is in the manifesto.
It is a communist manifesto. Not only from Mao. I mean, from Lenin, from Stalin, even Karl Marx himself. Because they have to. Now, of course, I mean, Karl Marx, his starting point was he wanted to become he actually became an atheist. But of course, some people say at his deathbed he kind of renounced his atheism. I mean, we are not so sure about that, but it was one of the hallmark that if we want to, so it's like kind of like a humanist mindset. You know, I can rely on my own strength. And even when you look at biblical allegory and example, you look at Tower of Babel, you look at the flood and things like that. It's like it has always been the story of humanity, right? They want to detach from a higher authority, I guess. Okay, no more hard question for you. But okay, let me finish with this with Lyra. Okay, now I wanted to look at all the different spectrum, but one of the spectrum very interesting will be authoritarian right. So that means you're for free market. Maybe two questions for you. Okay, so free market. But at the same time, you have a very tight social control. So from this survey site, they listed two nations, Saudi Arab
and Singapore.
Okay, so what do you think? I mean, is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I do think it is definitely a fair assessment of the two countries that was being mentioned. I mean, because Again, going back to like, if you want to push for certain society, certain order within the society, you do need some sort of authoritarian control. I mean, but credit to Singaporean government, they do a very good job in terms of like finding the balance whereby you allow free economy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of attraction for foreign investment. I mean, that really drives the whole country economy upwards. So I think that one is really kudos to the whole government. But also you have the other spectrum whereby they are very much on like government clamping down on a lot of things. Like the transportation is being controlled by the government, telecommunication controlled by the government. So to that end, I'm not sure if I do completely agree with what they're doing. But of course, I guess a lot of Singaporeans, they are happy with the government system and stuff like that. So
actually, it's very interesting when they talk about, it's one of the data I saw recently, Southeast Asia. So which country have most native, that means you are native born, okay, not talking about indigenous native migration out, and Singapore is number one.
interesting.
Yeah, because I guess because they could, and I mean you need to have the capacity to move out.
Now that you mention it, I actually have quite a few friends who, literally migrated.
And some of the political commentary I heard is really, again, I guess it's the same everywhere. It's becoming a class war. So if you are, I mean, Singapore tax is not even that high, but some of the higher, upper, middle, rich class, they feel like their lifestyle is a bit restricted. So if I go to Australia, I go to America, I have more freedom. But whereas for those people who doesn't have the capacity to, and now this is broad generalization, and they'll be like, hey, I'm entitled to a government sponsor accommodation, no problem with eating and living, no problem with medical, and government will make sure I don't live in a street, which is the reality of Singapore. It is prosperous in that sense. There is no hardcore poverty at all.
I guess that goes back to now HDB, the issue, right? Whether or not it's freehold, leasehold.
That's another huge topic. But I have to say, I mean, generally, I have been quite impressed with their economic management. I mean, compared to us, it's better, you know. And besides, they are social authoritarian, which they don't deny. I mean, Lee Kuan Yew himself said this is a boat that cannot be rocked.
Yep.
Yeah.
They don't deny it. So in the end, it's more like, what do you choose? You know, you want bigger house and things like that, move to Malaysia lah. Yeah. Okay, last question. Now both of you can say this, and we sort of discussed in the dinner. It is one of the nations they mentioned in terms of being very right and also libertarian. That means you are free market, but also you are socially, and free market especially. And they mentioned a few of the Nordic states and also Switzerland, which is very interesting because we talk about, okay, it's easy to do business in Switzerland. It's very easy to bring money in and out. Nordic also. But at the same time, they, especially Nordic states, have such a tremendous, almost like a welfare state policy. But somehow they still categorize them as right. So it seems, I mean, this is just my observation, but I want some commentary from you. It seems like from this test, free market has to do with how you do business. But once the tax revenue is collected by government, how they spend it doesn't really impact whether you are free market or not. It seems like that is the way. But what do you think? So, I mean, I think Nordic states maybe is easier because we know they have, even Germany, you know, they have such a socialist kind of welfare system for a long time. I mean, Germany, I just read 150 years of universal healthcare. But then all these countries are now leaning more and more into nationalist kind of leaning. Why? Because of unrestricted open borders and things like that. So it's very clear that they have socialist kind of program. So what do you think? You know, can you be considered free market if so much of your social policies, the way you spend money, are socialist?
Interesting.
And okay, this part one, and part two question is this: do you agree that if you want to implement a socialist agenda, at some point, you have to level up the authoritarian tendency. But of course, it seems like, I mean, from this political compass website, you don't have to force people in Sweden, in Switzerland, Nordic, you don't have to force people. But now increasingly, like Sweden, you are seeing people are not happy with migrants, and even there are news about how even in Sweden you have religious ghetto. You know, people just come here with different religion and lifestyle, and they don't allow the authority to come in. So this kind of thing. But anyway, these are two questions, just kind of open-ended discussion for both of you to comment, and I think we can wrap up our show today.
Yeah.
Well, I think definitely, I guess because of the history in these countries, like especially Nordic, because earlier on they had like really economic thriving. I think then the subsequent generations actually really benefited from the whole country being very, very rich. So I guess that's why they were able to afford, like, for a season of time, maybe even like 2-3 generations, that they are able to just have like very people are just being well taken care of, and yet you still encourage free market. But until such a time, I think like what Margaret Thatcher said, eventually the money is going to run out. So I think when that time comes, then you will need to have more drastic measure, whereby you do need to have authoritarian sort of control, clamping down, because it's almost like what is happening in Australia, whereby people just work very hard until you reach a certain threshold, and then you just kind of like chill, relax, because there's no point for you to work even harder anymore, because anyhow what you earn is going to be shared to another party, other people anyway. So I think it is like what you were saying, the question whereby at one point will it come down to authoritarian sort of control. I do believe that it will. It's just a matter of time before your whole resources just run out.
Suddenly when you answer this, I thought of another nation. I thought of Japan, because Japan was so economically prosperous in the 80s, but one of the projections for 2023 was that Taiwan will overtake its GDP.
Wow.
But of course, Japan, they still behave like they have big economy, but eventually they won't be so prosperous. Then maybe it's that, I know from your answer, it seems like the moment the money run out, the government will have to do some kind of authoritarian, because I mean Japanese society, they are quite compliant in nature, but what if the benefit stops? What if all the service, I mean they have top class infrastructure and things like that. What if those things stops? Then how are you going to cause people to be cooperative? I mean, just think about how the fate of nation changed. You know, even like UK used to be the most prosperous nation, then replaced by America. Today, you look at UK, you know, it's not really that. I mean, people should go there. You have money, of course. You have money anywhere in the world. It's nice, you know. But the typical wage earner is not. It's not as first world as you think it is. Put it that way, lah.
But I think even just like what happened with Sweden, especially during the lockdown. I mean, they were one of the first nations that really just, nope, we're not gonna like close down on our economic. The kids are still gonna go to school. I think just looking at that social behavior, they are not for a behavioral change by the government.
The authoritarian tendency.
So it's like if you trigger us, I think there's gonna be like riot that you see like in France, whereby people are really just unhappy and having that sort of protest. So I think they might.
Yeah, very interesting you put it that way, that nations having that, I guess, for lack of a better word, the freedom seat, you know, maybe they're used to it. So that's why you see a lot of, you see a lot of opposition from US also. And of course, a lot of Western nations come to COVID, you know, they're like Australia, things like that. They're not happy that the government is becoming totalitarian. But anyway, David, what's your take on, I mean, the long question? I mean, you can comment on any point of view.
Okay, for the first thing, first question, I think I summarize like that. It's like the government earn money through the free market, and when just like what you said just now, the middle class earning enough money don't want to earn enough more money, and at the end the country run out of money, and the government don't know how to do, so have some more intervene, especially the money goes to the welfare. So at the end, how do they sustain the economic kind of method? Because this kind of method maybe can sustain for a few years, or like 50 years, but also because of the, I think, oil and gas industrial and also of the good governance. But we cannot guarantee it will, like 100 years guarantee for so long period of the good governance and oil and gas run out. One day it will run out. So I think if I am the government, I will think about how do we use that huge money or earn back this kind of money in different ways. So if one day we run out of oil and gas, so we have like in Chinese we say 主权基金. 主权基金 is something like Khazanah, but funded by oil and gas, and we feel we can sense the totalitarian things there and social welfare there. So for me, to answer the sustainability, how to sustain the economic kind of question, the government have no way other than to have more intervention.
Yeah.
And the next question is the...
Now David, before we go to the next part,
yeah.
Your answer just kind of brought me to what we did last week when we talked about the budget, because when Prime Minister Anwar started off, he started with the biblical and Quran story of Joseph in Egypt. You know, he said 7 years. Yeah, he started off with that. 7 years to prepare for 7 years to prepare, good times to prepare for 7 years of bad economy. And you know, you just think about it like oil and gas is such a great example, because eventually it may run out. And that's why when times are good, you know, we talk about the first Sodomy case. Before the 97 economic crisis, Malaysia was experiencing double-digit GDP. Times was good, you know, and when times are good, people don't care about political implication. But then, that's why you think about all these Nordic nations, they have enough to keep giving handout. But when they don't have enough, then what? I just get the feel from your answer that, look, you know, you were saying if you were government, you will be focusing more on how do I do development, how do I do more sustainable. And I guess that's one area where I think Singapore is doing great in relative to many nations, is they don't think about the revenue only. They think about the reserve. They want the deepest financial reserve in the world relative to their GDP, of course. And it's interesting, you know, because that's a bit like Joseph, you know. You know, you plan for 7 years because...
I think the two questions is linked. It's like I want to sustain more, but I don't have enough money. So the first thing I do is more intervention.
Tax the rich. And give to the poor. More program, more handout. So that I kept getting the vote to remain in power. I mean, that's how totalitarian was born, right?
So that makes me think about what if at first we didn't get so many handout to the people. It's not that we are not helping the poor. Yes, we do give some handout to them, but some of the people it's like in Nordic country, we feel like we not need to work there and we can still survive for many years. So if we talk this kind of story to our Malaysian fellows regarding the races, let's go migrate to Nordic country. No point of working already, ma. So also make me think about the spirit of work, because some of the people they are so struggling when they're working. Yes, there are some works are not that good, but what if this country have enough space or enough quota for you to make you feel good, and also you push you forward to fight for the good spirit during when you are working. So they make me think about our emotion when we working. So all the things is linked together.
Yeah, I guess just hearing your answer, it kind of made me think, you know, because we are such a... I mean, we have the revenue. That's why we Malaysia sort of get away with handout for so long. But for how long? But of course, we have other problems, corruption and waste. But at some point, if you keep giving, then people just expect forever giving. And I think that's a real challenge for us. How do we get people off? I mean, even Mahathir himself at one stage was saying, how do I remove the tongkat, you know? But he doesn't seem to want to recognize that he was a huge contributory to the whole tongkat mindset.
The Malay dilemma.
Yeah, so I mean, he said himself, and yet for over 20 past years. But that's I guess is going to be the challenge of this generation. And what is the balance? you know, I mean, we none of us would say we are for socialism, but we are for limited intervention.
Yeah. So I want to recall back the thing just now you said, the Joseph story in the Bible. That usually we're thinking about the economic, the budget thingy in our nation. It's more like, oh, it's a political, it's an election budget. But this time I really think about what if 10 years, after 10 years, we really run out of our revenue and so many Malaysians go to any other ASEAN country to work. We become workers.
Reverse, we become the foreign labor.
Yeah, foreign labor in Indonesia. It may happen actually if we just relying on government to give out the hands out to us. It's not healthy at all. But at another point is like, is this country provide a good chances for us to working? I'm not very I feel pessimistic about this because more and more my friends, my colleagues, they were thinking about migration and working in Singapore, working in any other country because the high salary than much more higher in Malaysia. So how do we deal with that? So maybe it's not we love Anwar or something, but in this moment I really think about the political stability, have some of the good things of the political stability. Let's say the budget, actually if we look in the future for many years, not like the election budget or whatever, it may help in some extent, but if changing government every year, all Prime Minister, all the NOF, they just want to survive by the budget. And in 10 years, we really have to migrate to Indonesia for work.
Now, very, very interesting you mentioned this because I think today, Bersih just kind of issue a statement about the last GE. And in fact, they were proposing an act, you know, and let me see if I can find the name. Suddenly cannot find the name. But they were saying they want to have an act where, this is called Fixed Term Parliament Act. And basically saying that, look, once the government is formed, you cannot change government for 5 years. Now, of course, this is now for political...
Non-democratic.
Yeah, exactly. That's my first reaction. But, of course, they are coming... I mean, I'm surprised that they even propose this, you know, but say you're for free and fair election. But I guess what they are trying to come is a bit related to your point just now. It's like we have seen the effect of Sheraton and kept changing government. You know what? But I feel like this is not the solution. It's a bit artificial.
Yeah, agree.
We should look at some ways to... I mean, you look at the American system, the government will lose funding for a while if you're really crazy, but no government is collapsing. No president have been impeached before. Yeah. Even though there have been attempts. So I think you can improve the system to make it not so easy to change government. I mean, as in change government through very, very underhanded tactic. Now, of course, if they lose the support, they lost vote of confidence, the Westminster system dictates you should resign honorably. But of course, here we don't have much honor. But it's interesting, you know, it's like if there is no fear of losing government, would the budget be more bold? I'm thinking about that, you know.
Yeah.
Because if Anwar doesn't need to think about Selangor election, about losing power, would he have been more aggressive in saying, look, let's just reduce the subsidy, let's not do so much handout, but I'm going to create a development where there'll be opportunity for work. Yeah. But that's hard, you know, that's hard. It's like after so many years of NEP, it's not hard, but someone needs to have courage. And now remember, if you are familiar with the story of Joseph, for 7 years, they have to ration. So everything you earn, you have to give. The Bible doesn't really say so clearly, but I'm thinking it's not confiscation. It's like you earn everything, you give 1/5 or certain things to the government, but eventually when the 7 years come, you sort of have a credit system, you can withdraw. I feel it's a bit like that. Some people say it is a totalitarian seizing of economy. I'm not so sure. Maybe some of us can study on that.
Oh, interesting.
Okay. Anyway, I think we have sort of gone super over time, but it has been interesting discussion, and I think because David, one of the things that we are doing for the next few. Of course, today we sort of define left and right, but we want to talk about other political concept also, which was the aim for the next few episodes. But this, I think, just kind of kick off.
Yep.
And, talking about, because we all have different perspective, what freedom means, what choices mean, what limited government mean, and we want to talk about self-determination, big government. And maybe we want to talk to some very pro-Sarawak independence people and ask them what they understood self-determination to be. But anyway, that's all for the future. And so I think our time is out. So David, Tian, Lyra, thank you for coming.
Yeah,
Thank you so
thank you,
much.
Simon.
So until next time, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.